Last year, we named the Google Pixel as the king of all smartphone cameras, besting the Samsung Galaxy S7, LG V20, and the iPhone 7. This year, it has to defend its top spot against a whole slew of new phones, the first of which is the LG G6. Let's put these cameras head to head. First off, let's go over specs. Our number one pick, the Google Pixel, sports a 12.3 megapixel sensor, an f2.0 lens, and some serious processing muscle. LG's G6 is coming in with a 13 megapixel sensor, an f1.8 lens, and optical image stabilization. But as we saw last year with the V20, specs only tell half the story, and great software can overcome superior hardware. Now, it's important to note that we're testing these cameras the way most people use them, in auto mode. That means straight out of the pocket, using the stock app, with HDR on auto. The only setting I'm changing is resolution, going for the full megapixel count of each camera. I should also mention that the Pixel does have a wider field of view, so I tried my best to match framing when possible. With that out of the way, let's dig into the testing. As always, we're looking at three categories: color, clarity, and range. First up is color, and what I'm looking for here is accuracy, vividness, and how the camera balances color temperature. In this first example of a San Francisco alley, we can see right away that the G6 takes a more vivid, saturated image, but it definitely warmed up the photo a bit too far compared to the Pixel, making the image too orange. In this next image, you'd think the Pixel is too warm, but actually the G6 swings too far the other way and cooled off the scene past what's accurate. The vividness of the colors is nice, but I typically prefer a more muted image. This last example shows again that the LG G6 really pumps up the saturation, making the shot appear too unrealistic for my taste. It also cooled this scene off, making it more blue than it really was. So in the color category, I'm gonna have to go with the Pixel. The second category to test is clarity, and that really covers the overall sharpness of the camera and the post-processing applied to the final image. Last year, this is where LG faltered with the V20, so let's see if they made a correction with the G6. At first glance, the G6 looks crisper, but upon closer inspection we see where the Pixel really kills it in retaining small details, like the texture of the brick wall here. Macro shots just further solidify the strength of Google's lens, and while the G6 is doing plenty to catch up by adding a hearty amount of sharpening, it's just not as clear of an image in bright light. But that all changes when we head into the dark. In low lighting situations, the combo of OIS and an f1.8 lens gives the G6 a huge advantage over the Pixel, which has no IS. Just check out that fence in the background. It's a blurry mess on the Pixel, but it's perfectly usable on the G6. We head into an even darker area, and I could really feel the OIS take hold. Even though the G6 keeps the shutter open longer, it still stays crisp across the frame. The Pixel has to push its ISO to try to keep up, but it just can't. But I will give it props for not being too noisy, which is pretty impressive. So, the Google Pixel shines in bright light, and the LG G6 does great in low light. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to pronounce this category as a tie. The final category is all about range. Here we are looking at the dynamic range of the cameras and how the phone chooses to expose for the scene. We'll get some help from our trusty histogram in this one, and here's the basic way to read it. The left portion of the chart represents all of the dark areas of the image, and the right portion of the chart represents all of the light areas of the image. The exposure should be somewhere in between those edges, or else you will start to lose information. In this first example, we see the Pixel has captured a higher exposure, letting you see more information across the whole scene. It's a flat image, which is better for editing later, but it washes out the whole picture in a very unpleasant way right out of the pocket. The histogram shows the Pixel completely blowing out the highlights, where the G6 still keeps things within proper exposure. The next shot has the Pixel underexposing the scene to hang on to those highlights, but at the expense of losing information in the shadows. Looking at the histogram, the G6 is comfortably sitting off both ends, and still exposing properly for what I had envisioned. In fact, more often than not, the G6 gave me the exposure I was hoping for in high contrast scenes, all while maintaining valuable exposure information. The Pixel has a better range, but it was really missing the mark on exposing for the scene. I'm gonna have to give this one to the G6. So here we find ourselves in the proverbial pickle. The Pixel won in color, it was a tie in clarity, and the G6 won on range. This is a tough fight, and both cameras are amazing, but if we have to break this tie, we're gonna have to bring in an outside factor, meaning that we have to take a step back and factor in that the Pixel still struggles with lens flares, and the G6 has not only one amazing camera, but two. Also, the stock LG app has a plethora of features, including an awesome manual mode that the Pixel just doesn't have. So with that, we are crowning the LG G6 the winner. LG came so close with the V20 and it definitely learned from its mistakes. The G6 just barely beat out the Google Pixel, which is still an amazing camera, but having things like 2 lenses and a manual mode just can't be ignored in such a close fight. Congratulations LG, you will be moving forward as our smartphone camera king. Be sure to subscribe and come back to see the LG G6 take on the next major smartphone.